So, of course, I've already pre-made this script. I was having a couple issues with it in another game. Not sure why, because I used almost exactly the same script, if not the same script, but I may as well just show you how it works here. That way I can still get this done. So here's the units you'll need. You don't need the dummy unit. You will need bullet and you will need gun. So in our environment, we need an @bullet AI and an @enemy AI. Those two are pretty self-explanatory. Of course, you also need a bullet, an enemy, and a player. You don't actually need enemy. Bullet should be hostile towards anything you want it to attack. That part is very important. Now you're going to want to go to world. So of course these aren't important, but you need to assign bullet AI to bullet and enemy AI to enemy. That is important. So when the unit uses a gun, you're gonna have so the gun has a variable called damage. Set that to whatever you will, and the bullet has a couple variables: owner, damage, tracking, and mouse position. So when I use this item, the gun, we're going to want to do create bullet @position of triggering item for bullet AI with height of 10 and width of 5 and facing angle between owner of last triggering items, cursor, and center of window. This part doesn't work for some reason, but that's why I have this. So rotate entity to face a position instantly, ignore physics. Rotate last created unit to get owner of last triggering items mouse cursor position instantly. So then we're going to want to do set the variable of @owner of last created unit as owner of as of course in this case name of player, owner of last triggering item. And we're going to set damage of last created item as damage of last triggering item. We're going to want to set linear velocity of last created unit as 50 at angle between owner of last triggering items, cursor, and center of window. And then you're going to want to do set variable mouse position of last created unit as get owner of last triggering items mouse cursor position. Now we also have a cursor position every single tick. So for all entities in the game, if unit type of selected entity equals bullet, for all units in the game, if unit type of selected unit equals bullet, if owner of selected entity, so if the variable owner of the selected entity contains owner of selected unit's name is true, set variable mouse position of selected entity as get owner of selected unit's mouse cursor position. That part is reasonably self-explanatory. So bullet, when unit touches unit, this is damage. So when this entity touches unit, if @owner of this entity contains owner, so in this case owner being name of player, so if owner of last touched unit's name equals false, so in this case we're making sure that the player that we are touching is not the player who owns this weapon and created this bullet. Then we're going to set the health as the health of last touched unit minus damage of this entity. Then we're going to destroy this entity. Wall is self-explanatory. When this entity touches wall, destroy this entity. You don't have to do this. I just decided to do it that way. And of course we have health. When this entity's attribute becomes 0 or less, if attribute type equals health, destroy this entity. Health here, I'm actually going to set to 5. You're going to want to set it to -1 regeneration speed. That will take down 1 health every second. So this bullet will last 5 seconds before being destroyed. So in the tracker here, if distance between mouse position of this entity and position of selected unit, so for all units in the game, is less than or equal to 120, so about 2 tiles, if distance between mouse position of this entity and position of this entity is less than or equal to 480, that way bullets that are very far away will not curve. If owner of this entity contains name, owner of selected unit's name, equals false, if owner of this entity is hostile against owner of selected unit, equals true. If selected unit doesn't equal this entity, set variable at tracking of this entity as get ID of selected unit, and in this case we're using unit ID, get unit ID. Command this entity to attack selected unit. Now you're going to want to do if tracking of this entity equals, and I have it as none, because I set the, if you go back to my bullet, you'll notice I set the default value as none. So if it never decides to track anything because it's not close enough, just continue to set its linear velocity as 50, which was the velocity we decided to use. And of course, at facing angle of this unit, just keep setting it as that. That way it just keeps going forward. So of course, you'll see that these bullets, they get destroyed here, and of course they do slightly slow down. I'd probably have to make them a little bit faster for them to catch up to the default velocity I set them to go at, but you'll notice when I get very close to a player I want them to attack, they will immediately home onto that player. So of course you'll see I can do this. I can even do it when they're off screen a little bit. Now you'll notice they won't do that. But you'll notice this as well. If I shoot these backwards, they will actually try and home on to me sometimes if you get too close to yourself. That's going to happen. It just will. They're not always going to, it's not always going to be perfect. But, so if I go out here and I start spraying, you'll notice none of these projectiles that went out in this direction actually home onto this player because they have to be close enough. So you'll see if I shoot off to the side here and I come in a little closer, not all of them home. Only the ones that are close to the player will home in on them. And of course, that's the intended purpose of this. Again, I was going to make a tutorial on this, but I kind of can't. I will be making this game open source, so it will be visible to anyone who wants it. Anyone who wants to use this script in their game. Otherwise, you could just copy it from this video and you'll be fine. You're also gonna want to ignore all these reports. These are just yeah, this is gonna happen sometimes. You're just gonna want to ignore them. They're not. It's not. Nothing really is going. It's not going to actually. It's not some incredibly bad thing that's gonna happen here. Oh, I did forget to show you the AI as well for the bullet, which is this. You're going to want to have the max attack range to 0. That way they will try and get immediately to the player. The sensor radius actually doesn't matter. I have it set to 700, but it doesn't matter. You could set it as 0 and it would, I'll show you right now, you can set it to 0 and it will absolutely not affect their performance at all. So, yeah, that's about it. That's all I have to really say about this. Alright, I'm out.